Our game does feel a little bit too easy. Since nothing happens when we collide with the enemies, and they can't really shoot back. Doesn't seem fair, does it? So let's make the enemies shoot lasers, and let's make the lasers harm us. Firstly, I'll add an object that the enemies can shoot. So once again, I'll add game object, free object. I'll call it enemy laser. I'll make it a little bit smaller. And I want to set an image. Once again, I'll upload an image here that I've prepared. And I'll save the object. And now I want to make the enemies shoot the lasers, so I'll go into the object manager. And whenever an enemy is created, I want to shoot an enemy laser. I want to shoot it downwards. And I could shoot one right away, but then the laser would come from off the screen, which doesn't seem right. So I'll shoot one after, say, half a second. So now the enemy will first be created, and then after half a second it'll shoot a laser downwards. Let's try this out. So now you can see the enemies spawn, and then they shoot lasers when they enter the screen. But still, nothing happens when I collide with the lasers or with the enemies. Let's correct that. So I want to add lives to the game. Whenever we get hit by a laser or crash into an enemy, we should lose a life. And to do this, we'll use counters. So let's select the player and go to the object manager. We have something called counters here. So we want to add a new counter. We call it lives, and we save it. Now we have a lives counter connected to the player. This counter will start with the value of 0, but we want to start with 3 lives, I think. So let's go to events, on create. So whenever the player is created, we want to set the value of the lives for the player. So we can add an action for that. We call the action counter. We want to set the lives counter. We want to set it to 3 and right now. So when the game starts, we'll set the number of lives to 3. But we also, now the player has 3 lives, but we have no way of showing the number of lives the players have. To do that, we need to add some way to display it. So we press the add button and we add a counter display. These are objects that are only used for displaying the value of counters. I want to use an image display. I want to call it player lives, make it a little bit smaller, and I want to set an image. So I'll set a heart as the image, and I'll save this and I'll drag it into the screen. I'll put it here at the top left. And now I need to connect this counter display to the counter on the player object. And to do that, we have this menu here on the right side. You can see I firstly select which object's counter I want to display. I choose player, and then I select which counter I want to display, and I want to choose lives. So now this counter will display the value of the lives counter on the player object. Let's try it out. And yes, you can see I have 3 lives. Great. Now I need to make the lasers and the enemies take lives from me. So to accomplish that, I'll once again go to the object manager for the player. I'll go to the collide events, and I'll add a collide event with the enemy laser. And the action is counter. I want to change the lives counter. I don't want to add, I want to reduce it by 1. And right away. And also, when I collide with an enemy, I want to do the same thing. So we should lose lives whenever we collide with a laser or with an enemy. So this lives reduced by 1 right now. Great. Now we lose a life when we collide with a laser or with an enemy. But I also want the laser and the enemy to be destroyed once they collide with me. So I'll switch. You can switch objects right here from the left menu library. So I'll go to the enemy, once again go to collide, and add the player. So when the enemy collides with the player, I want to destroy the enemy. So what will happen when the enemy collides with me now is that the enemy will be destroyed and I will lose 1 life. And I'll do the same thing for the enemy laser. On collide, player, and destroy. So when the enemy or the enemy laser collides with me, I'll lose a life and they will be destroyed. Let's try it out. So here they're incoming. You see, I collide with the enemy is destroyed, and I lose a life. So now we've got a full-on battle here. I can kill them and they can kill me. Seems pretty nice. Oh, so now I lost all my lives, but nothing happened. I guess that's not quite fair. So let's make something happen when we lose all of our lives. That means we once again go to the Object Manager. We go to Counters. So we want to make something happen when the counter reaches 0. And we want to make something happen when the lives counter reaches 0. There are two events here, on increase and on decrease, but we want to add another one. We want to make something happen when the counter is at a specific value, and that value is 0, so we'll create the event when the counter is at value 0, I want to do something. So I select it, and what do I want to do? I want to restart the game. So when we go down to 0 lives, the game is restarted. Let's try this out. So I'm down to 2 lives, down to 1 life, and then and the game restarted. So whenever I lose all my lives, the game restarts. So now that's a small presentation of counters.